Thank you for joining us tonight in our Journey discussions. I'm Troy Kilpatrick, and we are live streaming from the Journey Museum and Learning Center's theater tonight. What could go wrong, right? It's been an exciting few minutes here, and we appreciate you all signing in and having patience with us to join us on tonight's special program. A little bit about Journey discussions. We've been doing these for a few months now. You can find a lot of our prior programs right at journeymuseum.org. They're all available to watch on demand, and I encourage you to go and watch those, share those with friends. There's all kinds of great content that's out there. Tonight is a very special night as we're live streaming here. We want to give a special shout out to the South Dakota Arts Council for underwriting and helping support our presenter tonight, Miss Joyce Jefferson, and helping the Journey Museum and Learning Center help bring this program to all of our community members. We certainly appreciate all of the hard work that the South Dakota Arts Council is doing to keep arts and culture going throughout the whole state of South Dakota. So big shout out to Patrick and the whole team in Pierre. We appreciate everything we're doing. We'd like to take just a few minutes of time here and talk about another South Dakota Arts Council project, and that is our Residencies for Recovery. Through this program, we have been able to bring in a fantastic artist. His name, Evans Flamon Sr. He is painting a original contemporary mural that's going into the center of the Journey Museum and Learning Center. And we want to make sure that everybody knows this is coming. You can come and watch this mural evolve over the weekends. We're open Saturdays and Sundays. It'll be completed when we go to our full 5-day-a-week schedule on May 19th. But we've got a little video that we'd like to share with all of you tonight, talking a little bit about the mural Unity. So here we go. Let's watch that video.
For many years, the main gallery of the Sioux Indian Museum has had this decorative design on the carpet. And we decided to replace that and kind of take the opportunity to create a new piece of art to fill that space.
Making the concept for the whole project, that name couldn't be more appropriate for what's really going on now with these troubled times. This is representing a good portion of that. As far as the 4 nationalities, which every color represents, and how we could all get along better and make this world a better place. And the 4 directions. And you got the triangular forms here representing the Black Hills, the buffalo for provider, and the horses for the horse culture, which my people were very in tune to. And then you got the sky. This represents the sky right in the center, and like a negative space aspect, where if you go beyond that, in my vision, in my heart, like sky's the limit. Whatever you can achieve.
I think this piece is really interesting too, and it's going to be a really unique piece here at the Journey Museum.
So again, we want to thank our partners at the South Dakota Arts Council for everything they do here for the state of South Dakota, arts and culture. Thank you guys from the Journey Museum and Learning Center. We look forward to sharing all of this wonderful new contemporary art in tonight's program here. Say, a Journey discussion, if you haven't joined one before, you're going to have the opportunity throughout this presentation to type a question that can be answered once this presentation is completed. So it'll be down in the bottom of your chat box in the Zoom. I'll send you a note, but feel free to send a question throughout this presentation. And while you're at it, please provide any information that you'd like for us to share with the South Dakota Arts Council. We do an evaluation for these types of programs, but I know that they would love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts as we're trying to persevere and continue to bring safe programming to our communities as we're starting to come out of this whole COVID-19 thing. Part of the whole idea of Journey discussions is we were never sure if we could have a full audience of you to join us here in the theaters Now we're broadcasting programs live, recording them, making them available on demand, and we hope actually we're serving more people than we ever have before. But we would love to hear your comments. We would like to share them with the South Dakota Arts Council, so please feel free to do that. So, are you ready yet for Sheroes? We have Miss Joyce Jefferson joining us tonight, and Joyce and I were speaking earlier, and so the fun story that we can tell here is Joyce's journey as a presenter pretty much started at the Journey Museum back in 2000. Early on in the Journey's life, Joyce was one of the first presenters inside this museum. As Joyce says in her bio, she is both an Air Force brat and spouse, so she's both of those, and she's lived all around the country. Joyce actually moved to South Dakota from Hawaii, and I was giving her a hard time earlier today. Well, if you lived in Hawaii, you would never have snow in April, right? So we're glad she's here in South Dakota with us. Joyce loves to sing and advocate for human rights and diversity. She is a co-founder for Three Voices, Speaking from the Past, a group that presents South Dakota issues in the hopes of healing racism and increasing cultural awareness. Would you all please welcome Miss Joyce Jefferson and Sheroes. Thank you.
South Dakota is overflowing with history of the American West, from Wild Bill Hickok and Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer to Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. And it's images of red men in white that first come to mind when people think about this state. But black men and women also carved a life for themselves in this vast, beautiful, often harsh land of the Northern Plains. Yet there's no mention of them in South Dakota history books, while most South Dakotans and visitors are amazed when they find that blacks were some of the earliest settlers in the state. One African-American woman is trying to change people's level of knowledge by touring the region and telling the story of the role her people played in this immense territory once known only as Dakota. Her name is Joyce Jefferson. Welcome her as she brings to you Black Hills Sheroes.
You got shoes, I got shoes, all God's children got shoes. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my shoes, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Heaven, everybody talking, but heaven ain't going there. Heaven, heaven. I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Howdy, how y'all doing? My name is Sarah Campbell, but everybody call me Aunt Sally. I was the first white woman to see these here black hills. You hear me now? Been all up and down these here black hills and these here black shoes. You hear me? Now, some of y'all done got a befuddled look and others of y'all done got a bemused look on y'all's faces when you hears me say I was the first white woman to see the black hills, and you notice my coloration is of a darker hue. Well, I will tell you what I means when I says I was the first white woman to see these here black hills. I've been up and down the Missouri ever since its muddy waters was broke by a steamboat. I accumulated quite a little property and settled in Bismarck to ease and luxury. Money didn't bring this child out here, I tells you that. This ain't no common Negro now, I tells you. I's got done working for money, I have. Now you wouldn't catch this here gal toting Chuck out here. I's got done working for money. Now, if it hadn't been for seeing these here black hills that Custer fetched us to, I'd still be up in Bismarck enjoying that ease and luxury. But I wanted to see the black hills. But they ain't no blacker than I is. Now, truly enough, when we come down from Fort Dave and we cast our eyes on them there needles, sometimes the way the sun look, make them hills look black. But I wanted to see these here black hills, and they ain't no blacker than I is. And I'm no African, now you just bet I ain't. I'm none of your common herd. I's got white blood in me, I have. And I got the money to back it. I have. I vanquished with the vanguard of civilization on the Custer expedition of 1874. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there, heaven. Heaven, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Now, I was hankering to see these here Black Hills when I hear that General Custer done got a commission to see these here Black Hills and survey them. Now, I was very disheartened when I done found out he done already had a cook, Nancy Mux Johnson. Well, I had to do a little bit of thinking and come to find out that Captain John Smith was gonna be the settler on this here trip. Now, Captain Smith and General Custer, they was just like this, 2 peas in a pod. So, General Custer hired on Captain Smith as the settler, and he handled the 10 teamsters. And then I hired on as Captain Smith's cook. My day was really light. All I had to do was make breakfast and roust up box lunches for Captain Smith, his 10 teamsters, and myself. Then the rest of the day was mine. Gold. Gold, we found gold. Yes, Lord, we found it. We was in French Creek, and it looked like the gold was just coming up, growing out of the grass. And I found my claim. It was 7 below discovery. There was about 20 of us over there. Now, I forgot to tell you that General Custer was on this here expedition. He had 1,000 men and just as many horses, 100 Indian scouts, and a whole bunch of other people. Captain Smith, his 10 teamsters, and here I was, bringing up the rear in my cook's wagon. Well, it took us about 2 months to come down from Fort Abraham Lincoln. I celebrated my birthday because we come down on July the 2nd, and my birthday, well, it was July the 10th. Got all the way down to French Creek, and then we turned around and we went right on back up to Fort Abraham Lincoln. We got there August the 30th. Now, I'm gonna come back just as soon as anybody. I loved all the gold that was there, but it was the most beautiful place that I'd done ever seen. Now, I could talk to you about gold from morning to nightfall, but it ain't the money that brought us here to the Black Hills. I'm coming back as soon as anything. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there, heaven. Heaven, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Now, come to find out, 2 years later, in 1876, that opened up the Black Hills to the gold rush. And that's when Aunt Lou come on up here to find out what was really going on. And I tell you, she outfitted her life. I tell you, every time you read the newspapers, they're writing something about Aunt Lou in the newspapers. Just like they did for me when I was here in 1874 during the gold rush. You know, I vanquished with the vanguard of civilization. But let me have you learn more about Aunt Lou. I've been working, praying, slaving every day, saving. I'm just tired, but thank God I'm not dead. I keep hoping, waiting praying for times are gonna start a changing. I'm just tired, but thank God I'm not dead. Born down in Turkey Creek, Overton, Tennessee, I learned to cook at my sweet mama's knee. I harvest my crops. Yes, I'm tired, but thank God I'm not dead. Yes, that's right, Aunt Sally. He's always writing about Aunt Lou in the Black Hills Daily Times, the Republican, and the Pioneer Times, but you just can't believe everything he reads in the newspapers. So let me tell you something about Aunt Lou, what you can't read in the newspapers. My given name is Lucretia, and it tells me it means profit, succeed, and wealth. I was born a slave in Overton County, Tennessee, March 25th, long before the war to free the slaves, and as quiet as it's kept. For a colored woman, born a slave, emancipated from my enslavement by the president, Master Abraham Lincoln, give life, liberty, and a suit of happiness by the Constitution, watched over by the Lord, His Holiness, and my protector, well, I guess I must have done all right. And I lived up to my name, Lucretia, profit, succeed, and wealth. Now, I was a bondswoman of Master William Martin Marchbanks, who gave me my family name. Now, my daddy and my master, well, they was brothers, and I'll let y'all ponder on that for a minute. Now, my liberty-loving daddy bought his freedom from his brother with $700 that he raised and saved by practicing rigid economy. Now, out west, when they talk to me, they ask me, Aunt Lou, you got any white blood in you? And you know what I tell them? No, honey, all I ever seen was red. What color blood you got? Well, I grew to womanhood on my master's farm, and I learned all of my daddy's frugal and industrious ways. And I was carefully trained in housekeeping and the culinary arts, which ain't nothing but fancy words say I can keep a clean house, set a pretty table, and cook a good meal. And I could cook a good meal. Now, my master gave me to his daughter for a wedding present. We packed up all our worldly belongings and we headed to the enchanted West, to the land of gold, fortune, and romance. Then, Master Abraham Lincoln, president, he emancipated me from my enslavement, and I wanted to find my own family. So I was Colorado bound, and there was another gold rush out there. It was Pikes Peak's a bus for old Aunt Lou. I found my sister, Martha Ann. We calls her Maddie. And I found my brothers, Burr and Finley. We calls them Burr and Finley. Well, I learned about the Deadwood gold rush. And there I was. I decided I would find out what Aunt Sally and General Custer was talking about. So it was Deadwood or bust for old Aunt Lou. Now, Deadwood in 1876 was a bustling town. And I found employment right away. And I was dependable and hardworking, and everybody knowed it. Now that's when one employer stole me from another employer several times. Now my last employer, or the last time I was stolen, was at the Father Desmit boarding house. Now, the boarders there, well, they was important men. They was superintendents in the mill, supervisors in the mine. Very important men. But you know what? I was the superintendent of the Father Desmit boarding house. Now, them men, they might be important people in the mine or in the mill where they work. But the moment they stepped foot across my threshold, they was but a meek and ordinary person. And I let them know it. Now, I was silently saving my money all along, just like my daddy showed me how. I took the money I saved and I opened up the rustic hotel at the mouth of Salt Pit Gulch. A newspaper man visited me at the rustic hotel and reported that I looked very well and 20 years younger than I did when I left the Desmit household. Now, after I worked for a while running the rustic hotel, I retired from the hotel and boarding house business. I was tired of cooking and cleaning for other folks. I purchased a ranch over in Wyoming. I got this little place right here in Rocky Ford. Friends visit me, and I give them, boy, I tend to my stock and harvest my crop. Yes, I'm tired, but thank God I'm not dead. What you say? They writing about me again? They says I's dead. Does I look dead to you? Well, what them folks over there at that Black Hills Daily Time got to say?
The Republican reports Louisa Marshman, Aunt Lou, died recently on her ranch in Beulah on Sand Creek, Wyoming.
Well, didn't I tell you? You just can't believe everything you read in the newspapers. They got my name wrong. My name is Lucretia Marchbanks. They talking about some Louisa Marshman. They said I died recently. They can't even tell the date. So how can that be true? On her ranch in Beulah? I told you I live in Rocky Ford. On Sand Creek, Wyoming. Well, at least they got one thing right. Yes, I'm tired, but thank God I'm not dead. Well, Mary Kercheval, she come up here as well. Her boys come up here. They was Kerchevals and they was Simpsons, and they had 4, 5 relinquished homesteads, and that's a lot of land. But I won't let y'all listen to Mary Kercheval and see what she had to say. Up over my head, there's music in the air. Up above my head, there's music in the air. Up above my head, there's music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Well, thank you, Aunt Lou, for that introduction. I was born Mary Tumbleton to Jeffrey and Elvira Tumbleton. Then I married Benjamin Simpson. Then I was Mary Simpson for a while. Then I married Jerry Kercheval. and I've been Mary Kirchable ever since. You know, sometimes the devil likes to play jokes on you. I worked for General Custer for 2 years after the war to free the slaves. But when he went to fight the Ku Klux Klan in Kentucky, I terminated my employment with him, and I stayed and worked for a family at Fort Leavenworth. I was able to buy a house with my sisters and a close family friend right there on Leavenworth, and it was right there on the trolley line. I done seen enough of what them there night riders done after the war and don't want to have no more to do with them there cluckers. Now here I am in the twilight of my life, and there's rumors that the Ku Klux Klan is spreading all over the United States, even here in South Dakota, including here on Centennial Prairie. I'm gonna tell you, looking back over my life, about some of my memories. Now my fondest memory, well, that was when my boy Charlie and me was working for General Custer. Them the young officers, they would pay Charlie a quota to take their notes, little gifts, flowers, bouquets to their lady friends. And then if their lady friends send something back, like a note or something, well then Charlie got a whole nother quota. I tell you, them little lieutenants had Charlie just running back and forth. I think Charlie must have made more money that summer than I made the whole time I was there. Oh Lord. There was a very, very disturbing time. I was working in western Missouri. I was a slave then, working on a tobacco farm. And I was doing my daily chores. And I was in the parlor. And I come across this here Bible. Now, that was not so disturbing. What was disturbing was when I opened it up, I saw my name and my children's names and their birth dates and all the other chattel property that the Nauer family owned. There they were, right there on the page. My Simpson boys and girls, my Kirchable children. Well, there was Levi. He was born October 11th, 1852. Then Benjamin, he was born October 8th, 1853. Then my baby girl, Elvira, she's my first one. I named her after my mama. She was born October 14th, 1854. There was this huge fire that upset all of Western, both on the Kansas side and the Missouri side in 1855. And it also upset my days of birth in October. Then I had Luann. She was born December 23rd, 1856. I call her my Christmas present. Then I had 3 Kirchable children. Samuel, I call him my freedom baby because he was born July 5th, 1858. Then I had another girl, Belle. She was born September 10th, 1860. And my baby boy, Charlie. I calls him my emancipation baby because he was born January 5th, 1863, the same year that President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. We all stayed working in the area after Reconstruction. My girls, Elvira and Luann, well, they got married and stayed in Kansas and Missouri. Then my oldest Kercheval boy, Samuel, he come out to Dakota Territory in 1876 after Aunt Sally and Aunt Lou come up out for the gold rush in the Black Hills. He worked as a farmer. Then my Simpson boys, Benjamin and Levi, well, they come out and they found some land, a homestead on Centennial Prairie. 7 years after I left Leavenworth, where I had property, I thought I'd join my family here in the hills. Me and my baby boy Charlie moved to the land that Samuel bought just south of Ben and Levi's places. 4 years later, I received a patent on my land. And the year I received my patent, I went back to Kansas to sell my interest in the house that I had with my sisters in Leavenworth. Coming back here, I purchased my own farm on Centennial Prairie for $150 in 1892 and received a patent on it just 10 months later, signed by President Benjamin Harrison. I deeded it to my boy Charlie in 1895 and filed on a nearby piece of property in 1904. Now, I imagine my proudest memory was during the Emancipation Day. We celebrated Emancipation Day, Proclamation Day every year. Sometime the 25th Infantry over there at Fort Meade would march through town and all the towns in the hills, and somebody would read the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, this here one year, the 25th Infantry didn't set it up. I think there was old maneuvers. And my boy Benjamin took it upon himself to set up all the festivities of the day. Now, what made it even more special? He had his brother Samuel read the Emancipation Proclamation. We must have danced all day long. We had enough food and lemonade to feed an army, but they wasn't there. Yeah, celebrating Emancipation Day. That was one of the most enjoyable days of my life. Once a year, every year. Now here I am, in the twilight of my life. Sold all my property and living the life of Riley. Sometimes I stay with my daughter, Belle, and her family up in Lead. And then sometimes I stay with my son, Samuel, and his family here on Centennial Prairie. I just love sitting here on my porch and my rocking chair to while the day away, drinking lemonade. Up over my head, there's music in the air. Up above my head, there's music in the air. Up above my head, there's music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Well, I am going to introduce you to the little lady who brought us here today. Her name is Joyce Jefferson, and she can tell you just a little bit more about herself and how we got here today. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet. Oh, yes, my name is Joyce Jefferson, and I have walked in Sarah Campbell's shoes, tried on Lucretia Marchbank's dresses, and reminisced with Mary Kercheval. And during this time, I have found out about many of the African American people who lived in this area. And I even got a career out of telling their stories. So I know you're probably interested in the rest of the story, and we've got a PowerPoint presentation that will tell you all about how these people ended up. Thank you, Mary Kercheval. I am Joyce Jefferson. I thank Aunt Sally, in whose shoes I've walked, Aunt Lou, whose dresses I've tried on, and Aunt Mary, whose memories I've shared. By trusting in the Lord, I was able to find my place in the world. By standing on the shoulders of these indelible pioneer Sheroes, I found a niche to tell their stories and make a few of my own. Let me tell you more about these Black Hills Sheroes. Sarah Campbell is featured here in an 1876 picture of Deadwood. I've taken the picture where Sarah Campbell is featured in the foreground and made her more prominent. She was born July 10th, 1823, either somewhere in Kentucky where her master owned land, or St. Louis where her mother might have been spirited away to hide Sarah's birth and identity of her father, who might have been her master. She died on her Elk Creek ranch, where she lived from 1884 until her death on April 10th, 1888. According to Dr. Lila Pingra in her book, Sarah Campbell, the first white woman in the Black Hills, was African American. During the Corporals, Cooks, and Cowboys exhibition at the Journey Museum in 2000, Sarah Campbell's wooden marker was on display. It had been on display at the Adams Museum when I first arrived here in 19... During the exhibition, a history buff brought this laminated protected document depicting the new headstone erected in 1934, probably by Sarah Campbell's adopted son, Anthony Herr, explaining the evolution of Aunt Sally's headstone. This headstone lot stands today to honor Sarah Campbell, commemorating her journey with the Custer Expedition of 1874. She vanquished with the vanguard of civilization. Lucretia Marchbanks was also known as Mahogany Lou, Aunt Lou, and in Thomas Odell's article, the mother to all folks in early Deadwood. Born near Allgood, Tennessee, March 25, 1832, she lived an extraordinary life until she died on her ranch in Rocky Ford, Wyoming, and was later buried in the Beulah, Wyoming cemetery. Lucretia Marchbanks is pictured with the superintendents and supervisors at the Desmit boarding house. You can barely see her dressed in white against this white painted boarding house in the middle of the picture. Surrounded by gladiolus or hollyhocks, Aunt Lou poses for a picture in 1905 at her home in Rocky Ford. The most amazing piece of research for me was that Thomas Odell wrote several articles about Aunt Lou based on interviews with people who had known Lucretia Marchbanks during her lifetime. These articles were featured in several Black Hills newspapers 37 years after she had passed away. Lucretia Marchbanks' headstone is the first grave you'll see as you come into the Beulah Cemetery in Wyoming. Even in death, they got her name wrong. The marker reads, "Gone home, Lucretia Marshman, November 22nd, 1911. They didn't get the dates right either. Some newspapers report she died November 11th or November 20th, 1911. As a matter of fact, Thomas Odell's newspaper article states the funeral services were held at her house at 10 a.m. on November 13th, 1911. I guess we'll never really know. Here's a picture of the Nauer family Bible, where Mary's name and birth date and the names and birth dates of her 7 children were recorded along with the rest of the Nauer family's human chattel. There are no known pictures of Mary Kercheval. In this picture, her grandson, Roland, her baby boy Charlie's son, Roland's wife, Beatrice, and their 3 children are pictured here. Mary Kercheval lived from August 10, 1833 to July 7, 1921.
When I first visited Mary and Sam's grave sites, theirs were the only two headstones on the knoll where they rested. In essence, during that time, they may have been segregated from the rest of the people who rested there. Today, they are surrounded by their neighbors of all colors. Mary and her legacy live on. On June 18th, 2018, I was honored and humbled to portray Mary at the first Mary Kercheval reunion at the High Plains Western Heritage Center in Spearfish on Centennial Prairie on Mary's land. I gathered most of the information to tell these stories of these Sheroes from newspaper articles, family members, archives, more learned researchers than myself, our research of the exhibition and book Corporals, Cooks, and Cowboys, which is out of print, Exploring with Custer by Paul Horsted, a newer version is available, and Dr. Lila Pengra's Sarah Campbell, the first white woman in the Black Hills was African American. This concludes my presentation, and we can have a discussion or conversation.
So Joyce, thank you so much for joining us here live in the Journey Museum and Learning Center on a live stream. Here's my question for you. What's more fun, performing like this or in front of a whole audience? I mean, this is pretty exciting stuff here with all the technology, isn't it?
I know it. Which is more fun? Well, I do have a live audience.
Yeah, there's a whole group of us in here scrambling around.
Right, it's not an invited audience, but some people's arms were twisted.
So Joyce, why don't you share for everybody here on the program tonight, you know, what got you passionate about telling these stories here?
Well, when we first came here, my husband and I went down to one of the museums in the hills looking for evidence of ourselves, and we walked through this museum and we didn't see one person who looked like us, and it was really discouraging. Well, after we finished going through the museum, there was this panoramic picture of African Americans dressed in white astride horses. And I thought to myself, oh, we could only be cooks. Well, we were at Fort Meade, and Fort Meade was a medical detachment, so maybe these were not cooks. Maybe they were medics and they were saving people's lives. On our way back to the base at Ellsworth, I said, you know, there's a lot of history in these hills and somebody ought to write about it. And I did not realize at that time that I was speaking my future. I did not end up writing about it except for in the stories that I tell, so that it is live for other people. That brought me to the Journey Museum and the first exhibition of the Journey Museum, not the first exhibition of the Journey Museum, but we had an exhibition at the Journey Museum called Corporals, Cooks, and Cowboys, which told about the African Americans in the Black Hills and the surrounding areas. And there were quite a few different things that gave me little pieces of the history of the Black Hills and made me want to learn more about it.
Well, it's interesting that it's interesting that you became the historian and the person who started to create the dialogue on this, and now tonight it's recorded. So you're making history.
All righty then.
So we do have a couple questions. One is in regards to Sarah Campbell. Do you know where Sarah Campbell is buried today?
Yes, I do. She's buried in Galena at Vinegar Hill. And I think in the promo picture, you can't see the headstone, but I was standing there at her gravesite.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And I thought that, but I thought that was a great question that came in.
And every year And I don't know if they're going to do it this year. Last year it was canceled because of COVID, but every year on the second Saturday in June, they have a Galena walk, and you can go all over the town of Galena, and there are lots of memorabilia about Sarah Campbell there, along with all of the people that she may have worked for or with, as well as you can walk up to Vinegar Hill and see her gravestone.
There's a little promotion for Galena. There's a lot of cool stuff up in Galena if you get a chance to go up there. That's where the South Dakota Coyote was at too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was in Galena. We did a turtle soup program on that, Joyce. So we have a question about the item from the Adams Museum, and I'm getting a question relay here. So I think this was a reference during the presentation of what was that specific item, Joyce?
The item was Sarah Campbell's headstone. It was a wooden headstone, and it was really aged, and it was on display at the Adams Museum. When we had our exhibition here, we had it also on display, and there was a historian or history buff who brought more information about the headstone and the evolution of Sarah Campbell's headstone. So she had the wooden one. And then there was another one that was, and I think it was just the first woman in the Black Hills. And then the second one, there was a mistake on it, so they made another one. And this one is brick, and it's I think they call it a headstone set. And it's really beautiful. And it says the days that she lived, and she vanquished with the vanguard of civilization.
That's eloquent, isn't it?
Yes.
We have a question as far as where is the location of the Desmit building?
It no longer exists. And I would probably have to do some research to tell you exactly where it was. But it was in and around Deadwood, in that area. And they had quite a few more cities during that time than they do now. So I'm not exactly sure where the Desmit household was.
Well, one thing about it, there was not a lot of space there, right, in Deadwood. So we can maybe locate that in our history detective hat, right?
Right. I'll check with the folks at Deadwood History, Inc.
There
They
you
might
go.
be able to tell
A
me.
shout out to the team up there at Deadwood, right?
Yes.
Joyce, what would you like to share now that you're separated from the presentation itself, but what do you think is the most important message that you on a personal nature would like to share with our audience here tonight?
Probably the same thing that I was sharing with my husband when we left the museum, that there is a lot of history, and if you look hard enough, you can find it and share it with other people. And the one good thing that I think we all appreciate is that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But I think in the temperature of today's culture, it's important to know that we did stand on the shoulders of many great people who brought us to this place, and that's this time in the world. And that not only should their memories be honored, but we should also live a life that honors them and tells their story through the way that we have grown. And many people should not discount us for the way that we have come up. And I don't think I'm making a very good point here, so is there another question?
Well, Joyce, I think that first of all, just on a personal level, thank you for your personal commitment into storytelling and making sure these history stories get told. I think that's an important thing. And I mean, here at the Journey, we work hard. We have Women in History Month. This would have been a perfect program, Women in History Month. Things have been a little different over the last 12 months. I mean, so we're doing programs like this now with live streams, but I think we have to work hard to make sure that we report all the angles of history and to capture all of the people in the communities that are out there. And I applaud presenters like yourself who put your personal time and energy into all of this. And you know, we just get these few moments where we get a chance to, tonight we're live streaming and sharing with an audience. We'll have a recording. And to me, that's priceless. It's priceless as far as what we're able to do. So thank you, Joyce. I have a question that just rolled in that I was just alerted to. So any plans to fix the Lucretia last name in Beulah on the headstone?
It's been there since 1911, and I don't know if anybody has notified the people who maintain the graves. I don't know. Is that something that you think I should do?
Well, I don't know, Joyce, but since 1911, that's been there for a while, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's right, but it's been there for a long time. We've got some thank yous that have come in, and we do appreciate that too, for all of you who've joined in. Again, if you've got any comments you'd like us to share with the South Dakota Arts Council, we would love to do that too. We're trying to be creative and persevere here and find ways to keep telling these stories and keep having this come out. And again, I'd like to give it one more shout out to the South Dakota Arts Council for everything they're doing all across the state, helping keep the presenters going and helping keep the arts and cultures institutions going and being a part of our communities and being able to engage in these conversations. So thanks for everyone and all they do here. We are getting close to wrapping up here, Joyce. Is there any final words you'd like to have on that? And as I ask Joyce if she has a final word, if there's any other questions, I will still catch that, but we're close to wrapping up here tonight's Journey discussion. But Joyce, to you the floor first.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for working with me so that we could have this presentation. And each time I tell these stories, it just brings me closer to the fact that I have a history and it's worth being shared. And it just makes me feel good when I can tell Sarah Campbell's story or Lucretia Marchbanks' story, and to introduce people to Mary Kirchable, who many people don't know about. When I was riding through Deadwood, I think it might have been in 2019, there's a great big picture of Lucretia Marchbanks, and it really made me feel so good to be able to see Lucretia Marchbanks along with the Gambler and Poker Alice and the other diverse culture that Deadwood had during that time. So I'm just happy that I could be a part of all of this.
Thank you, Joyce. If you could see one of the comments, so one of our viewers, I'm not sure, I can't count the number of exclamation points that are behind it. It's almost a whole line. So thank you for the wonderful program, Joyce. And so we feel the love on that there. And just as a reminder to all of you who are watching tonight, okay, we've got multiple cameras set up here tonight in the theater, and we'll repurpose the presentation and bring some more angles and shots to this, but it'll be available on demand here probably sometime in the near future. Just watch our website and be able to share it and watch it again. We just appreciate everybody joining us. I think, Joyce, unless there's anything else, it's almost time for me to sign off.
Well, I just wanted to thank the people who are working here and for Evan coming back to see it live. Thank you very much. And
All right, well, folks, we are going to sign off. And again, now our next journey discussion will be Thursday, May 6th with Rick Mills, the Executive Director of the South Dakota Railroad Museum. And we're going to talk about the Mickelson Trail. It'll be May and it'll stop snowing by then, so we can all go out and hike it. And Rick will give us the details on the Mickelson Trail. But for tonight, we close by always saying, somehow, some way, the journey will continue. Thanks
thank
for
you for
joining
allowing
us.
me to be a part of your journey.